Hi, it's Noelle, and welcome to the Noelle Floyd Podcast. Yes, you're not hearing wrong. We are updating the name of the podcast to the Noelle Floyd Podcast. So the reason why is actually really simple. We've found that, since launching the podcast, a lot of people just call it the Noelle Floyd Podcast. And so it just feels like a real natural evolution. And it feels sort of more connected. A lot of you who have been following me since my blog days, you might know or you might be aware that I launched my Substack, which feels really exciting because those are kind of my roots, right? Like I've been writing to the horse world for almost 15 years. Wow, that's crazy actually. And I find it to be an important service. I feel in service to the horse world. It's a part of the world at large that I feel really passionate about and I feel really committed to. And I think that's what drives a lot of what I do. And so it feels so good to be writing again and to writing for all of you. I feel like I write for the horse world, not to the horse world. And so, yeah, we're now going to be the Noelle Floyd Podcast. So welcome to the conversation. This is my first solo episode. And I really want these solo episodes to be a conversation between you and me. Like I want you guys to know that my listenership in for this podcast and my readership for my Substack, you mean a lot to me. I have wanted and desired to be in intimate conversation with the horse world since I started writing. That's kind of one of the reasons why I started writing, right? Was to explore and have a deep and introspective conversation about everything that we do with horses. I think horses invite us to be introspective and to ask bigger questions. I think we do them a disservice if we don't do that. And I want you to know that your questions are important. And I think it's now more than ever, it's important that we have this back and forth conversation because I want everyone to feel not only that you're in a community, but that you're in a conversation. That's really important to me. So we're going to be collecting those questions that you post either on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and or on the Noelle Floyd Plus platform or on my Substack. And we're going to be gathering them into themes, and then I'm going to be doing Q&A conversations either on my Substack or on the Noelle Floyd Plus platform that you can join, and they'll be accessible to everybody so that we can continue the conversation and start to clarify. I think one of the main reasons why I started the Noelle Floyd platform, like the Noelle Floyd brand or the Noelle Floyd, whatever you want to call it, the effort that has continuously evolved, right? A lot of you guys who have been with me from my origin days, it was a blog, and then it became a magazine, and then it became an online media platform. It became a form of storytelling. It's become a podcast. It's now a Substack. I think the way in which we converse and we connect with each other is like ever evolving, right? And so however we have the conversation, whichever platform we choose to have that conversation, it's what's important is that we're having the conversation. The dialogue itself is what's important. So I'm really excited and I want you to join me in those conversations. And I'm hoping that is one of the things that we can really provide is clarity, because I don't think that there's actually a lot of clarity within the horse world. I think it's actually quite convoluted and it can be quite confusing. And that was actually one of the big reasons why connection and community is a big pillar of why I started the Noelle Floyd brand, you can say, or the conversation that falls underneath that umbrella. But another one was clarity. I had more questions than answers. I am notoriously, to many people who have known me for a really long time, my questions can be quite irritating to a lot of people because they're deeper, bigger questions. But I think that's important. And so clarity for me has always been really important. We talk about, like, a common theme of what I talk about in the podcast is, feel. So many people used to talk about feel. Oh, that rider has a lot of feel. Oh, that rider has no feel. Oh, that rider needs to work on their feel. And I was like, what is that? And how would you break that down? And that's been an important pivotal, theme or thread within a lot of my episodes, both in season 1 and season 2 is, okay, let's talk about what feel is and how it is derived, how is it developed? What is it about a rider who has a lot of natural feel and what is it about a rider who doesn't? Um, and so clarity is important to me. I think clarity is actually more important than ever because there are elements of the horse world that withhold information as part of the systems. Um, Sharon Madeir and I talked about that in our episode about, the nature of cults. And one of the nature of cults is withholding information or controlling information. And I think that, in 2026, it's really important that we ask as many questions as needed to derive the clarity that we personally need on whatever it is that we're doing. And the reason why clarity is so important is because we are stewarding, we are looking after, we are responsible for horses that do not have a voice. They cannot say, "Hey, could you just," I mean, they have their own way of doing that, but they don't have a verbal ability to say, "Hey, I'm a little confused here. Do you mind clarifying what it is that you're asking of me?" And so our own clarity is so important. And I would argue it's more important because our clarity determines the lived experience of our horses. And so I want my platform to be a tool that you have to derive as much clarity as you need to pursue whatever it is that you are pursuing with horses and however you wish to live your life with horses. But information is power. More than anything else, information is power and knowledge is power and education is power. You are so much more empowered as a horse person in this world if you have as much information as you wish to seek. And so I wish to provide as much information as I possibly can to you. And there are lots of different ways we can do that. This podcast is one of them, but those Q&As are also going to be one of them. Something a little bit of a share, in honor of this being my first solo podcast, I'll share a little bit about me, guys, because I know that's a lot of you listen to me every week, and maybe there's some aspects of my own journey, and my own personality that I can share with you that does influence or affect the work that I do within the horse world. So I talked a lot about clarity and I talked a lot about questions. So over the years, I've not only have I worked in the horse world for a long time, but I've also ridden in the horse world for a long time. A lot of my listeners are connected to my own journey as a rider, not just as a writer, or a producer or a podcaster. And so one of the things you should know about me, which very much informs what I do, is that I ask a lot of questions and I ask a lot of questions to a fault, sometimes, or at least to a perceived fault. So, I was one of my stories that I developed as a kid growing up, and I was a real barn brat. Like I was a real, my parents had enough money to help me ride that I was actually able to ride horses, but not so much money to provide a ton of opportunities for me. So I needed to create those opportunities for myself. I've worked as a rider. I've worked as a working student. I've worked as a groom. I've worked as a summer camp instructor. I've worked as a riding instructor. I've worked as a catch rider. I've had a lot of jobs, and that was all before the age of 21. So I've been working in the horse world for a really long time. And one of the themes that was really present within my own journey was that I asked so many questions, it was irritating. And I've come to really learn that, I had a late diagnosis as being neurodivergent. I have a very sort of high level of ADHD, which I actually think, and I'm grateful for that late diagnosis because I'm really grateful that I never developed any stories around it kind of being, I don't believe it to be a handicap. I believe it to be a gift. My neurodivergence is what makes me see things a little bit differently. And that's definitely been, I'll be honest with you guys, that's been super annoying to a lot of people. And before I became a journalist and before I began writing, I had this story that I told myself that I was an annoying person, that my curiosity and my inquisition was annoying to people. Um, and it's because I think I often asked sort of bigger questions, like the why behind the why, like the kid, that's like, why do we do that? And you give an answer, but why do we do that? Or, it's just a constant inquiry, which, there's a time and a place. And over the years, as I've become an adult and I'm a more mature individual, I've learned that there's the right timing. You have to ask questions at the right time, in the right moment, when there's space and opportunity for deeper discussion. But it was only when I became a journalist and when I began to write and to storytell that I realized that my divergent way of thinking was really a gift. It's what makes me do what I do in the way that I do it. We're all unique. No one is like me. No one is like you. We're fundamentally individuals. And I think that individuality is really to be celebrated. And especially in the horse world, I think that sometimes in certain corners of the horse world, people can sometimes make us feel like it would be better if we assimilated into the way of things. And I just want to offer for all of you, if you are someone who feels really comfortable in one tribe of the horse world, and I'll say that I will be talking in the future solo podcast, I'll talk about the tribalism of the horse world, and what that means in our human experience amongst ourselves. But if you're someone who assimilates into one tribe of the horse world and you feel really seen and heard and understood by one group of people, I completely celebrate that for you. Like, I think that's amazing. I think belonging is just one of the most important parts about being a human being. And I think belonging is worth being sought after. Um, I personally am someone who maybe finds belonging in a little bit of a different way, and horses have definitely derived more belonging to me than humans. Um, but if you're someone like me, maybe if you're listening to this and you feel like, well, I don't really seek belonging in that way, or maybe I'm someone who likes to be a little bit on the outside, or a little bit more fringy, or a little bit more of an outsider or an outlier, I would really invite you to check out the book, The Gift of Not Belonging: How Outsiders Thrive in a World of Joiners. And it's a book by Rami Kaminsky. And he is a psychologist who has proposed or presented a new idea to the world just about the concept of outroversion. Um, I think I think outsiders should be celebrated as much as insiders. I don't think one is better than the other. And I really want to emphasize that. I don't think that one is better than the other. I think both belong and they both have a ton of strengths. I've come to learn that being neurodivergent, being maybe someone who's above average in their inquisition and their curiosity to the point of triggering and annoying to some people, um, but also, so, in a way, really helpful. That curiosity has been really helpful for a lot of people. So in that, also, I've kind of been exploring the concept of outroversion, or being an outsider. And I think that it's something to really explore if that's something that feels like it maybe describes your experience within the horse world. The horse world can really present the idea that you need to join something to belong, or that you need to assimilate to the way of being and thinking and doing in order to belong. And I would challenge that idea to say that you actually, if you're someone who thinks a little differently, does things a little bit differently, maybe you don't feel like you fit in somewhere. First of all, I would tell you that I feel like I'm more like that. My role in this is not to fit in. My role is to observe and to see and to understand all different aspects and to respect different aspects. I don't believe one tribe in the horse world or one facet of the horse world is better or less than the other. That's so much of what my road trip was about. For those of you who are familiar with the big road trip, which I will talk a lot more about on the podcast. I drove 25,000 miles across the country, across the continent of Canada and the United States with my two horses, Lady and G. And the goal was, and I remember early on in the road trip, I was at a clinic and one of the people there kind of asked me, well, which kind of basically like which part of the horse world are you from, or what do you believe in, or which club basically are you from? Like, are you in? And I basically said to her, like, I'm not part of one or the other. Do I have affinity to show jumping? Absolutely. My background's in show jumping, and I love the sport of show jumping. I love the horses in it. I love the riders in it. I love the sport. I love the spectacle, the intensity, the athleticism. And any of you who are listening who have jumped horses competitively or non-competitively, I mean, jumping horses is like as close to Pegasus as you'll ever get. It's one of the most magical feelings on the planet. Um, and yet I also think that I've learned so much from cowboys. I've learned so much from the Western way of doing things. I've learned so much from working cows on thousands of acres in Idaho or in Alberta or in Montana or in Wyoming. Like, I think that there are so many ways, and there's so many ways of being with horses, and there's so many different tribes within the horse world that I'm so interested in learning about each and every one of them. And so I share all that because I want to invite this idea that if you're someone who has never felt like you belong, I would totally invite you to buy that book or to read that book on Audible, The Gift of Not Belonging by Rami Kaminsky, because you might feel a little bit more seen and understood in your experience. And I don't think the horse world has done a particularly good job at just providing space for people who necessarily don't belong, right? This idea of not belonging and it being a bad thing. I spent a lot of my youth believing that not belonging was a bad thing, but in actual fact, it's like one of my greatest gifts and strengths is that I can be objective. I'm not influenced by one way or another way. I try to remain objective and I try to remain on the outside so that I can see the patterns of the horse world and then write about them or talk about them or produce about them. And so, yeah, that's like maybe my hot take of the day in this episode is really to celebrate however you uniquely exist within the horse world, and to not don't feel like you ever need to fit in. If that's not your journey, don't try to fit into somewhere that you don't align with. Don't pretend to believe what other people around you believe. If you don't, then don't. And respectively, and I'm going to get into this in another episode, but find a way to stay in connection with people while also maybe not necessarily agreeing with them on everything. We don't all have to be the same. In fact, it's our diversity within the horse world that's what makes us so beautiful. That's one of the things that I love the most about the horse world is we're such a diverse group of people from different backgrounds, from different religions, from different political affiliations, from different countries, cultures, perspectives, intelligences. Like, it's such a rainbow of individuals, and that should be celebrated, just like horses, right? Horses are all individuals. That's something that I believe, and I think we are also. And I think the horse world will be happier when we start to celebrate our individualism, not our conformity. So I thought I would read you a poem that I wrote. I am a poet. I do write poetry, and I've been writing poetry for a number of years, but I haven't really shared it with the horse world because it's quite vulnerable. But I started sharing a few of my pieces on Substack, and they seem to be enjoyed. So I thought I'd continue to share a few of them. And written poetry is different than read poetry. So I'll read you this piece as a contribution to this episode. And please let me know what you think or how it makes you feel, right? You don't need to really, poetry is not really meant to make you think in the way that it's supposed to make you feel something. So please let me know in the comments how this poem makes you feel. It's titled, Who Do You Think You Are? Are you trying to learn me or label me? Who am I? Do you mean where I'm from? What I one day might become? What I do, what I've done, where I've been? Do you mean what you see or what I've seen? What I fear or what I dream? Do you mean who I love? Do you mean who I've lost? Who am I? I guess I am exactly the same as who you are. Not better than, not less than, not more than, but here, nonetheless. Because there is no one who has been or will ever be exactly the same as either you or me. And that is how it should be. So next time you feel labeled or led, misrepresented, tolerated, or perpetuated, know this. No one sees, breathes, sings, leads, or feels the way that you do. What a gift it is to be the real you. So all that said, I am really excited about these solos. I've kind of started this effort as with an intention to have more communication and connection with all of you. I feel really connected to my listenership. So many of you have come up to me either at horse shows or at clinics, at events, even at barns, at the wet lab that we had here at Pegasus a few weeks back, and have shared with me that they listen to this podcast every week. And I want you to know that if you ever see me anywhere in the horse world, please come up to me and tell me if the podcast has made an impact in your life or in your journey. Don't ever feel shy to come up and talk to me, because I do this for you. I'm not doing it for me in that way. It's supposed to. I really, really believe that this effort is in service to something, and I've felt that way for a long time. So please feel free to always come up to me and talk to me. I am super excited about these solos, despite the fact that it's been really hard to start my first solo. I felt like a little blocked in how I could talk to you guys authentically, while, essentially talking to a camera and talking into a mic. I've been procrastinating about recording a solo podcast for months. I knew that I wanted to, but I felt inhibited. And I know a lot of you guys will know what I mean when you want to do something, but you don't quite know how to get there. And it took, talking to a few people, my producer, my fiance, different riders within the horse world, to kind of give me the little, the nudge to get in front of the camera and just talk to you guys like this. So thank you for being here. And thank you for being in this conversation and in this community, because it means the world to me. And I hope that it means the world to you. And the more that I can contribute to offering community and clarity for you, that's why I ended up that was kind of why I ended up being able to kind of push past my own roadblocks, right? Was that, okay, well, if I get in front of the camera and if I record my first solo, then I have the opportunity to invite everyone to do these Q&As, to be part of the conversation, to provide more clarity for everybody, with different members of the horse world. And so you guys were kind of how I ended up being able to get in front of the camera and record this first solo episode. So thank you for that. It kind of had to be bigger than me, right? And I think that's often how we get past a roadblock or an inhibition. Maybe it's to do with ego or it's to do with vulnerability. But sometimes we need to have a bigger why, right? And so you guys were my bigger why. That's why I ended up reporting this solo. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. So please click and subscribe and share to the Noelle Floyd Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, either Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or the Noelle Floyd Plus platform. Please share this episode to anyone who you think would not only get a lot out of my solo episodes, but the podcast as a whole, who have some burning questions that they want to ask. I'm going to be personally reading through all of your questions and your comments on this episode, but also on the channels that we're going to share in the show notes, where you can provide your questions and your comments. Know that I will be personally reading all of them. They matter to me. This conversation and this community, my listenership, you guys mean a lot to me. So thank you for being here.